Hello everyone. I hope everyone's doing okay. We have a pretty active start or a pretty active end to November and a pretty active start of December ahead of us. Um, some winter weather chances possible um, across the sort of lower Ohio Valley regions, but higher chances in the upper Ohio Valley into sort of the Midwest regions, and we'll go over that here shortly. Um, so there's two storms. We have the storm phasing in through tonight into tomorrow morning across the Midwest and into the Ohio Valley. And let's start off with that briefly, but I do want to talk about mainly the storm chances for next week across the Ohio Valley as well. So this is the GFS model here, this morning's run, and we're going to see how the phasing happens here with the moisture from the south and the cold air from the north. Let's just sort of examine how the GFS phases everything together and compare it to the Euro model. All right, sorry about that. But let's look at this. Let's look at this model run. This is Saturday morning here. Tomorrow morning, and we can see our low pressure coming out of the Rockies here into the Kansas, Oklahoma region. Not too strong, 1,000 6 millibars, but we can see the sort of warm front associated with this low pressure here across sort of uh, central Missouri into sort of southern Nebraska. But we can also see sort of this colder air here depicted by our height lines, um, sort of clashing in with the moisture that's pulling in from the Gulf. And as this sort of low pressure begins to move across the Midwest here, um, that sort of moisture plume that it's drawing in from the Gulf of Mexico gets sort of wrapped into this colder air, and we're going to see some pretty heavy snow, I think, across Iowa, Illinois, southern Wisconsin, Michigan, Indiana, northern Indiana in particular. And we'll see this sort of continued track off to the northeast. Interestingly enough, here we can see that warm wedge here, sort of creep in to sort of central Illinois, central Indiana, and that could hurt totals, overall snow totals. But the GFS likes this sort of low to go over Lake Michigan and up through Ontario here, and mainly rain for this sort of central Ohio Valley, but the northern Ohio Valley, quite a bit of snow is possible here. Um, but we can see the phasing pretty well there with the low pressure, the moisture, and the cold air. And we can see our next disturbance out in the Rockies here. This is going to be our sort of winter weather maker, possible for next week. And let's watch this. So we have our sort of warm air, warm moist air being evected in here. We have our low pressure out. We have our low pressure out coming out of the Rockies here. So weak low pressure somewhere in this general area. We can see our cold air being sort of funneled in here. And where these two meet here, our sort of moisture and our cold air, we're gonna have some sort of interaction with both of those, and more likely we'll have some ice or some heavy snowfall. So let's sort of see how this phasing takes place here. And as that sort of main low pressure begins to form in the south, phasing with that shortwave disturbance in the Rockies. It combines together here, and low pressure sort of in the Alabama region by Tuesday morning, early Tuesday morning. And we can see that sort of heavier snow across the Ohio Valley, central Ohio, northern Kentucky, southern Indiana, much of PA. West Virginia looks like more of a rain event, um, according to this run. And then we can see, interestingly enough, here, part of some cold air damming potentially taking place. Um, very well possible. Remember, high pressures sort of spin clockwise, and low pressures spin counterclockwise. So we have some sort of cold air damming here, with high pressure sort of to the north, sort of northeast region, a weak high pressure, and this low pressure, infecting that moisture in, um, combining with that high pressure, helping with the cooler air settling in, into the valley here. So interesting, output there. It sort of does get overtaken by warmer air. Freezing rain definitely a possibility, and we can really see this um, storm begin to strengthen in the northeast. So let's move on to the Euro model here. See what its phasing looks like, how it handles this cooler air and the moisture. And we can see already a more sort of um, slightly more northern track. It is very similar, but we do have more sort of warmer air, um, making its way northward here into Illinois and Indiana. Um, definitely some heavy snow across Iowa, northern Illinois, including Chicago. That seems very likely. As we move on here, we see our shortwave in the Rockies here by Monday morning, and that's going to combine with this Gulf of Mexico moisture, and it's going to sort of phase. Here's our shortwave across here. Our main low is going to form down south, and our phasing is going to happen across sort of our Ohio Valley region here. This is Monday evening. As we move on into sort of Tuesday morning, we have a low pressure sort of southern Alabama, a bit more south than the GFS. The GFS has sort of central Alabama, across sort of the Appalachian Mountains, in the Carolinas. The Euro takes it more coastal here, and a more southern track is going to allow that colder air to dip more southward here. And that means the snow line is going to be further south. So half of West Virginia, still southern Kentucky. This would be our sort of main snow area here. Whereas the GFS had um, more of a northern sort of um, snowfall region. So something to compare and contrast there. The Euro likes this sort of, as of now, it's like this more southern track across the sort of coastal regions in the Carolinas. And that would have implications on where our snow line would be across the Ohio Valley. So these are our sort of forecast models, that sort of combine um, everything and give us a sort of mean here. And this is our going to be our snowfall through this first snow event, across sort of the Midwest, Upper Ohio Valley. And we can see here, a nice sort of 10 to 12 inch, even 14 inches possible across parts of Iowa, even parts of sort of southwestern Michigan. But a good foot of snow is possible across many of these pink colored regions. Chicago, more of the 8 inches. Indianapolis, more of 2 to 4, probably closer to 2. Um, so this is going to be a pretty significant, first snowfall for this region. It's going to kick off winter with a bang here, I believe. Let's look at our national blend of models here, another sort of combination and blend that we use, and even higher totals, 12 to 16 inches across much of this sort of lighter pink, this darker pink here, more sort of vibrant pink, more of 9 to 12 inches, and then the purples sort of 6 to 8. So, Chicago here getting easily around a foot of snow, and parts of sort of southern Wisconsin and eastern Iowa, north western Illinois could be getting excess of 16 inches according to this. So, definitely a high end winter storm in this region. And with this, we can actually go ahead and move forward with through Wednesday morning here, and we can see, this down here is going to be part of that sort of second system here that I was mentioning, and we can see the confidence is really low for accumulating snowfall across the Ohio Valley. There's a lot of sort of differences right now. So, as these sort of iron out over the next few days, we will sort of likely see this be enhanced. But again, Midwest, Northern Ohio Valley, good snowfall in store. And I'm going to show the sort of differences here in our ensembles. This is our Euro ensemble here, and we're going to see this. This is our first storm here, with the snowfall in the Midwest and upper Ohio Valley, and we can see these low pressures, all these different low pressures, sort of combined together, leading, and we can see even more here, leading to good agreement of where this low pressure is going to track. So the snowfall accumulations across the Midwest, Upper Ohio Valley seem to be pretty moderately confident, I would say, even highly confident in many areas. So that is good news for snow lovers up there. As we keep on advancing here, this is Sunday morning. Low pressure enters Canada by Sunday afternoon. We do have some sort of ridging going on, sort of just stable air. But by sort of Tuesday morning here, we can see that sort of main low pressure as that shortwave exits the Rockies, moves eastward into the Central Plains. It's going to begin to help low pressure development near the Gulf here. And this is going to help with, along with that clashing cooler air, help with this Ohio Valley um, snow threat that is possible. So let's sort of look through this, and we can see already displacement with these lows here. It's got some up through the Outer Banks, down through the Florida Panhandle. So that's a significant spatial difference with our lows, and we even have one up in the Smoky Mountains here. So overall, by Tuesday evening, Tuesday night, we do have a general agreement of a coastal low, according to our Euro ensembles. This would favor more of that snow threat being more south into sort of central West Virginia, central Kentucky, southern PA. So, if you want snow in those regions, this is sort of the scenario you'd want to see. But let's look at our GFS ensembles. Let's look at where their low pressures are, and we can see overall the same sort of agreement on where the low pressures are going to be for this first system. Telling me there's high confidence in that setup and the accumulations possible. And by sort of Tuesday morning, the GFS has these lows much further north. We have a few coastal, but it's much further north in general. Um, the Euro had some more across the Panhandle, sort of the southern or the northern Gulf here. But the GFS a bit more, it doesn't have that high of a signal, and it's further north. And before it really begins to strengthen and sort of begin to experience, you know, um, um, that increase in strength, it's sort of too far north before significant snow impacts can happen in the Ohio Valley. So most of the snow is going to happen in the Northeast, according to the GFS. So the GFS has slightly later phasing. It doesn't have that low pressure being as further south and as strong as the Euro does at this point. So if that low pressure is further south and further south and is stronger, it's going to have a better time phasing with that cooler air up north and that moisture vection sort of moving into that cooler air. If you don't have it, further south and you have it later, like the GFS ensembles here, you'll have, later phasing with that cooler air, more of a rain event, just because that cooler air is not further south. And, obviously, if it's later, even if you do get snow, it's going to be far less. So there are some great differences between the Euro and the GFS, and this will be needed monitoring in the next several days for sure. So these are our extended ensembles, and this sort of goes out over 30 days. The normal ensembles go out just several weeks. So um, or this goes out to around mid of January. So these are nice to have a good idea on what temperatures could be like or what weather conditions could be like overall. And we use these sort of pressure anomaly maps here. These higher, sort of deeper colors, reds, whites, pinks, indicate more sort of ridging, stable air, clearer conditions. Um, Often in the winter time, even cooler conditions as well because of that dry air. Um, so we'll use this to sort of look into the rest of December. Um, so by Saturday evening into Sunday morning, we can see um, more of this sort of stormier weather, more cooler weather combining together here for that um, sort of low pressure across the Midwest. And we can see much of December here. The first few weeks of December is going to experience this sort of wetter overall pattern here. Um, and obviously, we'll have that cooler air set in as well in the north. So this sort of tells me that, um, with the cooler air, if it's in place, and with this wetter pattern in the central and eastern United States, the snowfall potential does exist across the northern sections of the United States. So something to look out for. This sort of ends by sort of mid-December, and usually when they're out, those ensembles are this laid out, they get not as accurate. So, um, taking this with a grain of salt, we can see Christmas time, maybe more of a warmer trend across the United States. But again, taking this with a grain of salt, the first few weeks here, we're going to see that sort of wetter trend in the central and eastern United States. Um, Something else I do want to mention here. these are sort of our teleconnections. These are used to help forecast sort of more long term. And I'm going to sort of just talk over the first sort of three here. We have our Arctic oscillation, Eastern Pacific oscillation, and our North Atlantic oscillation. And we're going to start with our Arctic oscillation. So this chart here, 0 to 7 are our positive values, 0 to -7 are our negative values. 1 to -1 is considered neutral. Anything over 1 is considered positive. Anything over -1 considered negative. So this is our Arctic oscillation, and we have a sort of neutral to negative pattern through the next week or two. This ends December 13th here, so this sort of negative pattern seems possible, especially into around December 8th on that Monday. And we can see this negative, just slightly negative pattern take place by then, but more of a neutral Arctic oscillation. In this, a neutral and sort of negative Arctic oscillation means that there is a um, high pressure over the ridge, sort of pushing out that cooler air from the Arctic Circle into the mid latitudes. So you often have a strong high pressure over the Arctic Circle or near the Arctic Circle, and you're going to have more low pressures over our mid latitude regions, including sort of the US, central eastern US. So when we have a neutral and sort of slightly negative Arctic oscillation, that just hints at that there is potential for just more low pressures, more sort of overall rainfall or snowfall in the mid latitudes. And this is our Euro ensembles. We look at our GFS, shows that sort of neutral phase up until about the 8th. This is where the sort of ensembles begin to lose the sort of accuracy. Um, but regardless, the first week of December looks to be sort of stormy across the United States. We'll look at our Eastern Pacific oscillation now, and we can see that currently it is negative, and it's going to stay negative up until about December 6th and sort of stay neutral until the 8th of December. So a negative Eastern Pacific oscillation allows for a high ridge over the Eastern Pacific. When you have a high ridge or a deep high pressure over the Eastern Pacific, that's going to um, help kick out Arctic air again from the Arctic Circle regions um, into the North American regions, often um, central North America into eastern North America um, from the Arctic Circle. So if you have a higher ridge in the Eastern Pacific, the more cold air that will um, that will be pushed into the United States. So we have this signal here of a highly negative Eastern Pacific oscillation. So that's going to help that Arctic air be pushed into sort of central U.S., eastern U.S. So um, this paired with the Arctic oscillation, where there's low pressures are more common in these same regions. We have the cool air, we have the moisture potential with these low pressures. So we have the signals here for the next week, 10 days. Let's look at our North Atlantic oscillation, and we have a positive phase. It's 2 right now, dips down to 1 over the next few days, and then goes to more of a neutral phase by the 6th and 7th of December. If you have a more sort of positive phase, um, it just in general means a more stormier East U.S., more neutral phase that sort of starts to fade out. So over the next week, we do have that stormier sort of potential according to our North Atlantic oscillation. Additionally, I want to point out our um, Madden Julian oscillation forecast, and this helps sort of with longer term forecast as well. And there's 8 phases with this forecast here. Phase one, phase two, phase three, phase four, phase five, phase six, phase seven, and phase eight. And this describes sort of the eastward movement of clustered moisture, of rainfall, and it also often travels in the tropical regions across the globe. And again, this helps forecast um, in the longer sort of ranges um, with where this bulk of moisture is at. And usually, when it's in phases, phases eight, where the forecasts here were on this day here, the 27th. So through early December, first few weeks of December, we can see some of these model predictions going into phase eight, borderline phase seven, phase eight, and often phase eight um, indicates a cooler central and eastern United States. And we can see this here in our temperature composites for December, January, and February. DJF's listed here. Phase 8, we do have this cooler eastern half of the United States. So with this sort of new, phase transition over the next week, closer to phase 8, um, with all of our teleconnections lining up, I do think we have the potential for this snowstorm here to be significant across the Midwest and the upper Ohio Valley, but we also have another shot for another significant snowstorm across the Northeast and the Ohio Valley. Um, the cooler air will be in place more than likely up through the first 10 days of December. So obviously there's going to be chances for more snowfall, but that far out, we're just looking at trends, and the trend is cooler air is in place. Um, will we have sort of that low pressure um, form in the mid latitudes, form from the Gulf, come from the Rockies? Where will this low pressure be if we even have a low pressure? That's the bigger question, and we don't know that yet. So um, overall, snow your start to our winter here. Even though it's still fall technically, but snowy start to the season regardless. And stay safe if you're traveling out there, especially this weekend. And yeah, I will have further updates on this sort of next week's storm for Monday through Wednesday across the Ohio Valley.